Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Empowering's first webinar on awareness raising. We will start within the next 3 minutes. Let's wait a few seconds more. I hope you can all hear me well. We will have today 3 presentations. The first presentation will be given by Christine Thorvaldsen from DG Energy from the European Commission, and will be on training on EU policy for energy and climate and the Covenant of Mayors context and advantages. After that, we will have a presentation by Susanne Rydell from Skriva Populärvetenskapligt, and she will talk about how to identify your target group and how to work with target group specific communication. And after that, Katrin Svensson from the Energy Agency of Southeast Sweden will give you some examples and good practices on raising awareness of general public. You will have the possibility to ask questions after each presentation, either by writing in the chat or raising your hand. And you will also have the possibility, if you come up with questions afterwards, to send them by email to me, and I will forward your questions. This webinar will be recorded and will be available on the project's website. So I guess we can start. And I would like to welcome Christine to start with her presentation. Unfortunately.
Okay, can anybody? Yeah. All right.
Now we should be able to hear you, Christine.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
And we see also your presentation.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Christine Thorvaldsen, and I work as a seconded national expert at the new European Commission. Today, I will present some of the main topics in the EU policy area. My unit is especially involved with the governance file, so I will elaborate on this later. I have somewhat of a tight schedule, so I will have to leave by 10:30. So if you are having any questions that I'm not having time to answer, please do not hesitate to send the organizer an email, and I will follow up on your questions in due time. My main focus today will be the overarching goals of EU energy and climate policy and how we are planning to achieve these goals. In this context, I would like to emphasize the roles of cities, municipalities, and local government in achieving these goals. Why are the local governments important? For many reasons. Local authorities are important to reduce emissions, build resilience, and promote cooperation. As key actors in achieving the climate and energy objectives, we acknowledge your contributions and we support your efforts. And I will come back to this later. It's very important to stress that climate and mitigation actions are good for your citizens. Cleaner cities, cleaner air, better health, new jobs. Strong engagement from the business communities, the civil societies, regions, and cities were absolutely crucial and contributed to the successful outcome of the Paris Agreement. And this is one of the reasons that EU supports low-carbon transitions through different funding and networking opportunities for cities and municipalities, such as the Urban Agenda, the Urban Investment and Advisory Forum, the Covenant of Mayors, which I will also come back to later, Smart Cities and Communities, Horizon 2020, Smart Cities Marketplace, and so on. And because of this crucial role for local governments, you should also be given the tools to implement ambitious plans. The Commission is working closely with the European Parliament and the Member States in the Council towards adaptation and new legislation in the Clean Energy for All Europeans package. This is a comprehensive set of measures that are meant to give the cities the tools to implement ambitious local strategies. It also sets up a framework that in the long run will help cities to become smarter by deploying innovative solutions that will help to reach their goals. But before I elaborate more on the package and the deliverables of the package, let's take a step back to get an overview of the overarching goals of the EU energy and climate policies. And we'll start with the background for the Energy Union targets. The EU 2020 framework had targets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and interconnection, with having goals of reduction of 20% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2020, having a 20% renewable energy share, and also reducing the energy expenditure by 20%. One of the 10 priorities of the Juncker Commission is to have a resilient energy union with a forward-looking climate change policy. And in this context, in 2014, the EU countries agreed to a new 2030 framework following up on the 2020 framework. This included EU-wide targets and policy objectives for the period between 2020 and 2030. These targets aim to help the EU to achieve a more competitive, secure, and sustainable energy system, and also to meet its long-term 2050 greenhouse gas reductions target. This strategy sends a strong signal to the market, encouraging investment in new pipelines, electricity networks, and low-carbon technology. The targets are based on a thorough economic analysis that measures how to cost-effectively achieve decarbonization by 2050. And just to go through the different targets, to reduce the greenhouse gas by at least 40% by 2030 from 1990 levels, to have at least a 27% share of renewable energy in energy consumption, and also to have a 27% reduction of energy expenditure compared to the business as usual scenario. And of course, to achieve these goals, we will also have policy measures to make sure that they are in place. Therefore, the European Commission has proposed a reformed EU emissions trading scheme, new indicators for the competitiveness and the security of energy systems, such as price differences for trading partners, diversification of supply, and interconnection. And here we are at the core of the Energy Union, where we have mutual supportive and interlinked dimensions supporting the Energy Union. I will elaborate on all of these, but I will just go through them. It's energy security, solidarity, and trust, a fully integrated internal energy market, energy efficiency, decarbonization of the economy, and research, innovation, and competitiveness. The first dimension, energy security, solidarity, and trust. Included here is working towards transparent markets and supply, working towards supply diversification, and resilience to supply disruptions. A fully integrated energy market includes greater transparency on energy costs and prices, connecting markets through interconnectors, regional cooperation and empowering consumers, and also to have a regional approach and regional integration. And this is very important. We have already briefly talked about the energy efficiency dimensions when we went through the goals on the previous slide. But just to elaborate a little bit, to have 20% savings by 2030 compared to the baseline scenario will mean that the building sector, the transport sector, and the efficient products should all contribute to this. The decarbonization of the economy is the goals for the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, both by 2030 and by 2050, as well as the goal for renewables. And the final dimension, which is an overarching dimension in a way, is the research, innovation, and competitiveness. This dimension is crossing all of the above dimensions. Greater energy efficiency will reduce costs, increase competitiveness. Research and innovation of renewable energy can lead to greater deployment and lower costs of renewable energies. So, in the national energy and climate plans, which I will also return to later, we therefore ask member states to report on what measures they can plan under the research, innovation, and competitive pillar. So, this is the main deliverable with regards to the energy union work, the clean energy package for all Europeans. The clean energy package was presented by the Commission on November 2016, and it aims to create an optimal condition for the energy transition and providing a legislative framework for a more integrated, more market-oriented, and innovative energy sector, with consumers at the heart of the energy transition. Therefore, these elements will together stimulate investments, create jobs and growth, secure energy supply, accelerate decarbonization, and also empower consumers, and also therefore your citizens. This package will turn the Paris Agreement into concrete action and make sure that our energy system is fit for purpose. At the same time, it will help us meet our ambitious 2030 energy and climate goals. To go into a little bit more detail on the points below, it will stimulate investment by mobilizing an additional 177 billion euros of public and private investment per year post-2020 to meet the 2030 climate and energy targets. It will require longer-term regulatory stability, allowing for investor certainty and predictability through the planning and regional cooperation. It will simplify the administrative burden for renewables project developers. When it comes to jobs and growth, the energy sector today employs close to 2.2 billion people, spread over 90,000 enterprises across Europe. The package has the potential to deliver 900,000 additional jobs and pump 190 billion into the economy by 2030. The package will secure energy supplies by supporting diversification of import sources and accelerate decarbonization by decreasing the carbon intensity of the economy and increase the share of non-fossil fuels in electricity generations. And when it comes to empowering consumers, the share of spending of energy in low-income households is high, and energy efficiency measures will bring significant energy savings from all consumers and lower energy prices. This will also contribute to reducing energy poverty. And all of this is very relevant for cities and municipalities, of course. The package puts the consumers at the center of the energy system, which evolves towards more decentralization, more renewables, and more variability. This requires more flexibility from the system, including the consumers. The Commission proposes that consumers, including collectively, play an active part in the market. Local energy communities aim on facilitating collective self-consumption and the active participation of the consumers in the market. And here, local authorities have a key role to play in order to facilitate the emergence of these local energy communities. The Commission also proposes balanced provisions on energy poverty, especially in the context of renovation of buildings. Indeed, local communities are often already involved with a number of the measures that are proposed by the Commission. So, how do we achieve the goals of the Energy Union? Well, three main headlines: putting energy efficiency first, making the EU world leader in renewables, and delivering a fair deal for consumers, i.e., your citizens. By putting energy efficiency first, it will have a direct impact on the bill of the consumers. By changing the way the metering and billing for heating and cooling will give consumers clearer information about how they consume their energy. It also addresses, as I mentioned earlier, the social imbalances in energy access. Performance of buildings has a major impact on the affordability of housing and energy poverty. The efficiency improvement in housing stock will enable many households to escape energy poverty. And also improving the energy efficiency of products through eco-design and energy labeling will deliver yearly energy savings and possible savings on energy bills for up to 500 euros per household per year. Of course, mobilizing private investment is key for a successful energy policy, and therefore the European Commission is launching the Smart Finance for Smart Buildings initiatives to add funds, both private and public. And the energy efficiency measures can contribute to the competitiveness of the European industries as well, by creating a new market for insulation and glass, as well as creating a building renovation market for small and medium-sized enterprises with a value between 80 to 170 billion. Secondly, under the headline of making the EU world leader in renewables, Europe wants to be number one in renewables, and have collectively set itself a target to reach 27% in final energy consumption by 2030. However, today, EU accounts for a lower share of global investment in renewables than a couple of years ago, and also the markets are not sufficiently connected, which does not allow for the smoothing that is needed, at least when you have large number of variable renewables over a large geographical area. Also, the heating and cooling sector and the transport sector are still heavily reliant on imports for fossil energy. So the directive supports the use of renewables in heating and cooling, and the continuous increase in the share of innovative renewables in transport, with specific attention to biofuels. To accommodate the rising share of mostly variable renewables, wholesale markets have to allow for short-term trading and also reward flexibility in the markets, both for generation, demand, and storage. Moreover, market rules will have to be adapted to allow renewables producers to fully participate in all market segments. And the final point, delivering a fair deal for the consumers and the citizens. In the center of the energy union are the consumers, and they will benefit from greater control of their energy demand and spending. The new energy markets will deliver more innovative services and more opportunities for savings for all consumers. Consumers will finally become active market players, guided by the growing affordability of small-scale technologies such as rooftop solar panels. Engaged consumers who interact with the market will make it more flexible, facilitating the integration of electricity from renewable energy sources and also reducing the need for costly backup. So, what changes for the consumers and your citizens? Consumers or communities of consumers will be entitled to produce, store, and sell their electricity. They can request smart meters from the energy suppliers and get market-based energy prices. The consumers will also be able to switch suppliers more easily, thanks to the proposal to restrict the use of switching fees. They will get reliable information on the best deals in the market based on certified online price comparison tools. They will also have the opportunity to make savings through different demand response measures. And here are the tools from Clean Energy Package. We have the Energy Union governance, which I will elaborate on later. We have the energy efficiency measures. We have the renewables, the new electricity market design, and also energy reprice and cost report. The package all aims to set a stable and predictable regulatory framework. And before starting on the governance, I will just say a couple of words on the other deliverables in the package. The energy efficiency file builds on existing legislation, which is mentioned on the slide, the Energy Efficiency Directive and the European Performance of Buildings Directive. As some of you may be aware, the file of energy efficiency is currently under negotiation, legislative negotiation between the Council and the European Parliament. This is also the case for the renewables file and the Energy Union governance file. We hope that an agreement will be reached by summer, and we support the co-legislators in the negotiation process. On the market design proposal of the package, it's also progressing, and we expect trilogues to start as soon as possible. The market design proposal includes elements such as provisions for affordable energy, market flexibility, clear price signals, and regional cooperation. We welcome the positive developments in view of having the package agreed and entered into force this year. This will be a significant step forward to the energy union. Now I will go back to the governance. The governance system will be a cornerstone to ensure that the implementation of the energy union along all the 5 dimensions, and for making sure that the different elements of the clean energy package are consistent and coherent. And this we will do through the national energy and climate plans, which will provide a solid system that allows progress to be assessed on EU level, shortcomings to be identified in an early stage and tackled so that 2030 targets are met. The governance will promote better regulation and reduce administrative burden, both for the Commission and also for the different governments, in order to streamline some reporting of data and so on. These plans will also contribute to development of a true EU-wide approach when it comes to defining energy and climate policies, strengthen regional cooperation, and last but not least, to have sufficient solidarity between member states. And in the heart of this is the National Integrated Energy and Climate Plans. These are put together of several elements covering all 5 dimensions of the energy union. I will come back to the details of the plans a little bit later. But first, I will just go into the kind of overarching bit. The National Integrated Energy and Climate Plans will be prepared well before 2020, and they will be sent to the Commission and assessed, and we will provide recommendations. After the National Integrated Energy and Climate Plans are in place, there will be national progress reports every 2 years, and the European Commission will continue to monitor the achievement of the goals in the energy union. In this slide, you can see how the template for the national plans is set up. Basically, the national plans is the plan for each member state on how they are going to reach the goal within the energy union. Therefore, the plan consists of all 5 dimensions in the energy union and consists of different sections. As we can see, you have the section A, national plan, section B, analytical basis. On the overview and process of establishing the plan, you have a description of how the situation is now. You have an executive summary, and you also have kind of a summary of the different processes made. National objectives, targets, and contributions are to ensure that the policies are met with concrete action. You will therefore set national objectives and targets on each of the 5 Energy Union dimensions, and then you will describe through the policies and measures how you are going to achieve these goals. You will also provide current situation and reference projections, which elaborate on how the situation is now, and also on the impact assessment of the different policies and measures. And here, I would like to emphasize that cities can contribute to these national energy and climate plans, because globally, cities consume over 2/3 of the world's energy, and so they are extremely important in order to achieve the energy and climate goals that the national plans will set out. Through choices you make regarding the building and transport sector, and public procurement processes, and also on the public hearing of the plans, you can share your ambitions with the national government. Just a quick comment on this slide. The proposed, these numbers are based on the initial proposals from the Commission, both with regards to when the plans will be submitted, as well as how when the recommendations will be sent. Just to comment on the years, but I will use this. So, as we can see, the member states will draft their national plans, and then commissions will issue recommendations with regards to these plans. After receiving the recommendations, the member states will then publish their final national plans, and then the Energy Union will use different measures to make sure that the national plans are ambitious enough in order to achieve the Energy Union goals. And after that, you will have the progress report, as I mentioned. And this work is progressing well and ongoing. A lot of member states have already an institution and structure in place to make these national energy and climate plans. They have already have targets and commitments for 2030 on the Energy Union dimension, and have increased their modeling capacity. So, just to round up my presentation, I will just mention briefly where we go from here. Of course, now the main focus is the negotiation between the European Council and the European Parliament on the different clean energy proposals, and we'll follow the trilogues closely. We also work with the member states on the integrated national energy and climate plans. There is the second Energy Union tour that goes across the EU, and also the fourth state of the Energy Union. And this will be published by the end of 2008. So this was my brief into the different policies on energy and climate side from the European Commission. I see I don't have much time left, but I will be happy to take your questions, and I have talked to the organizers and they will forward it to me. So I don't know if you have any other practical information before I leave.
Thank you very much, Christine. Many thanks for this very good and informative overview on EU policy for energy and climate. and we know that you have to leave, so we will let you off, and we'll continue. Many thanks, and if there's any questions, please email them to me or to Kerstin, and we will forward your questions to Christine.
Perfect.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
And we will now continue to our next presentation by Susanne Rydell, who will talk about target group communication. I will just make her a presenter. Welcome, Susanne. The screen is yours. Susanne, we cannot hear you right now. But we see your screen. The program says that you're not connected to the audio. Susanne, maybe it's the easiest if you log out and log in once more, because we can still not hear you and it seems that you're missing audio. Sorry everyone for this. We had a test before and everything worked fine, of course. And now we're facing some technical problems right now. Susanne, can you hear me? sorry for this. I'm trying to get in contact with Susanne, but have not yet succeeded. I will see if Katrin maybe can take her presentation before Susanne, so that we can solve these technical issues.
Hello, Anna. Would you like me to make my presentation now?
Yes, if it's possible. Then I will try to solve the technical issues with Susanne during that time. I'll make your presenter.
Okay. Wait.
Okay, we see your screen now, Katrin.
All right, good. Well, my name is Katrin Svensson, and I'm working at the Energy Agency for Southeast Sweden. I've been working here for almost a year, and before that I worked in a municipality called Kristianstad in the south of Sweden. And Kristianstad is also a member of the Swedish Association for Climate Municipalities. So today I will give you some examples about how those municipalities work to engage and involve citizens. Let's see. There seems to be a problem by changing pictures or slides.
You seem to have not the presentation mode.
Do you see my screen with all the slides or just one picture?
We see all the slides.
You see all the slides.
Maybe if you unshare your screen and then start sharing your screen once more.
Okay, so I should stop the application first or what?
Just the show screen.
Anna, can I just try? Can you hear me now? This is Susanne speaking.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
because
now
I
we
switched my audio system to the computer, so then now I'm also standby.
Okay, perfect.
So if you want to, this is Susanne. If you want to, I could start instead, whichever is easiest. Sorry about this.
We can switch back to Susanne, and then we'll try to solve the problem with the presentation for Katrin.
Well, do you
And
see
maybe
how the screen
some-
right now as well?
Yes, it looks the same.
All right. Yes,
Let's
continue
start
with
with
Susan.
Susanne. So please go ahead, Susanne. And I hope that, yep, it works.
Okay, is it my screen? And okay, then I will start.
Just the presentation.
Okay.
And we can hear you well.
Thank you. My name is Susanne Rydell. I work as a journalist and as a science communicator. And I will talk about some possible approaches to work with communication in a very hands-on fashion. And specifically, I will talk about identifying target audiences, adapting information to different target audiences, and how to make your communication clear for challenges applicable for all target audiences. So at the base, we have the question of our information, our messages. We have information that we want to convey, and the question is, how do we go about this in the most efficient way? And I think that one very practical way to start thinking about this is to start with a number of questions, familiar questions. You recognize them from other contexts. And the first question is why? What is it you want to achieve, and what are your goals? What is it you want to make happen? And in order to make this happen, who would you need to communicate with? Who do you want to reach out to, and who is most efficient? If you want to achieve something, who would you need to reach in order to make them act or make changes or whatever it is that you're looking to achieve? And when you have an answer to the first two questions, what is it you want to achieve and who do you need to reach out to, then you move on to the question, what will be your main messages? What will your information focus on? How do you address your target audience in the best, most effective way? And when you have the answer to this, the next question might be when. When is the right time to convey your message? Should you be working with this continuously on a website, or would it be better with using a campaign, launching it at a certain time, maybe in connection to other events or something else that you see that this will be best done at a certain time? And then you have one last remaining question as well. How? Which channels would be best to use to reach your target audience? Is it a website? Is it personal information? Is it advertising? Is it social media like Facebook? Or is it something else that would be the best way to reach your audience? This is also a brief overview of how you can look at your communication and your information to analyze it a bit to see what is this a good, successful way of communicating. And at the top, we always have our target audience. We have the adaptation of the information to the target audience in relation to our goals and the context. And we know, when we know our target audience, our goals, and the context, where will they be reading this, then we can look at the content and the structure of the information. Is it the right content for our target audience? Is the structure right? Do we have the most important messages at first? Are they clear? Are they adapted to the channel that our audience will be using? And then we can look at the language, obviously, the sentences and the words. Are we using clear, concise sentences? Are we using words that are appropriate for our audience and as simple as possible? And also a brief look at spelling and grammar, because that makes the whole, the message and the information easier to understand for our audience. But I will head back to one of the key questions, the target audience. Who are they? how do we know who we should address and how we should identify different groups? And first, I want to stress the fact that there is a saying, talk to everyone and you'll reach no one. And that is often the case, actually, because if we try to reach everyone, we tend to get very broad and general with our information, and the risk is that no one will feel really affected and be able to relate to the information. So it's usually a good idea to try to think of a smaller group and think about who do I need to talk to in this matter. One example might be if you have information that actually would be good for the general public, the citizens, it would still be difficult to write or construct this information if you think that it should be good for everyone. I think a good idea is generally to think about who is affected the most by this information, or who could benefit the most from this information, so that when we produce it, we can think of a specific audience, a specific target group, in order to get our information and messages more clear. And there are several ways to think about your audience, your target groups. How do we go about this? And some often used segments are age, education, life stages, household size, geography, which region are you addressing? Is this a rural, metropolitan area? Attitudes, is your audience generally negative or generally positive to the information you're producing? Personality, hobbies, what are interests, what are subjects that your audience could relate to? It might also be the case that you want to address businesses in your region, and there are different ways to go about this as well. You could think about the sectors, obvious, banks, energy companies, car companies, etc. But you could also think about roles within the company. Maybe the CFOs or technicians in different companies have more in common than people working in the same company. Might be the case. So think about these possible ways to find your target audience in order to produce information that is relevant to the group. And when you know who you want to address, who would the group that is makes most sense and would be relevant for what you're communicating, there are a number of questions you can ask yourself in order to make your information more relevant for your target audience. One question is obviously to think about the audience's previous knowledge about the subject. Are they familiar with this? Do they know a lot? Do they have specific questions, or is it a more general overview that they would benefit from the most? Are they motivated? Are they interested? If not, you may have to put more effort into awaken the interest, the motivation, to be clear with the arguments why this is important. The attitudes, obviously, are they positive or negative? If there are negative attitudes, there may be ways you can take the edge of this by addressing worries or concerns or whatever it might be. Are there benefits from this information, things that your audience could benefit from? Maybe you want to highlight this at an early stage to make it clear. And their experience, is your target group a group of experienced readers? Do they want complex information, in-depth information, or should it rather be information that's easily scanned, or that you can maybe watch a video, or you can use another way to reach your audience? And then, not least important, the context. Where and how will your target group receive the message? Are they in a position where they will have a lot of time? Are they under stress? Is there other things that affects your audience's possibility to take part of this information? A writer's tip that many people talk about is that it might make it easier when you write or when you produce information for your target audience to have a specific person in mind. Picture someone who is a part of your target group. Do you have a neighbor, a colleague, a relative, someone else who is a part of your target audience? Think about this person when you write, to make it more real and to think about how can I express this in a way that's clear and interesting to this person, which usually helps in writing for a larger group as well. One way to make this information as useful as possible for the target group is simply to ask them, because it's difficult to know unless you're very familiar with this target group. Otherwise, it might be a good idea to interview a few representatives from your target group before you start producing your information material. And this doesn't have to be complicated interviews. You can make it easy, just a few questions, and ask, how do they feel about this subject you want to inform about? And what would motivate them to change if that's what you want to happen? Or what would demotivate them? And if you do this before you start working with the material, you might also to do it once you've finished with the material and before publishing it. Test it, try it on a few persons. What does your reader or viewer or listener, if this is a podcast, what do they feel and think? Is your message clear, and have you achieved what you wanted to achieve? It's input from just a few people usually makes it possible to adjust and adapt and maybe enhance the information a bit. And some general tips on adapting your content and structure for your audience. Try to be very careful in selecting the most important messages and be clear and consistent. It's easy to try to say too much, but try to select different messages for different occasions and different target audiences. And remember to highlight the most important messages from the reader's point of view. What attracts interest and what is top of mind for your audience. It may not be the same thing as we initially think, but we need to attract attention and start at a point where we can reach out to our audience and they can feel this is important and I understand why this is important right now. You can also use the structure of your text to make your message clear. Generally, it's a good idea to start with the most important message, because you cannot count on your reader finishing your text or your viewer finishing a video or listening. Things may come in between, and be sure to have your main focus early in your texts or videos. If you have many different points you want to communicate, you might try using lists, bullet points, because this is an easy way to list things and make things clear. When you have an audience, if you write for the web, the reader who scans your web page will see these lists and bullet points. So this is generally good for most target groups. Another thing that's in common for basically all target groups is that they're lacking of time, and it's hard to attract attention because there is a lot of competition of different information, and your readers and viewers are often lacking of time. So another few tips about what you can do is try to present your information from your reader's angle. So one example would be that instead of writing about a new technique that provides means for energy saving, which in turn results in a possibility of saving euros for an end consumer, you could start with using the word you and highlighting this. You can save 10 euros when using this method, etc., etc. So instead of writing about the general techniques, put it into a context where you write about it from the reader's angle. Another way to attract attention is to be specific and try to be close to your audience. If possible, start with local examples and try to be specific. Write about something that the audience can identify themselves with, if possible, that it makes it relevant and realistic. And try to use, reach out both with logical arguments and try to also come across something that can make your audience feel something, because usually it's easier to remember the information if you succeed with both these means. So the question of where does your target audience find their information? Where do you reach them? And there are several channels, obviously, that you could use. Website information may be the most common used and the most obvious one, where I would like to point out that you should work with the search optimization and think about which keywords your target group will search for. Is this target group, do they use specific words when they talk about the subject, so that they will find your information when they search for it on the web. Social media, can you provide interactivity and help out with answering questions? Could you cooperate with influencers, people who already interact with a lot of other peoples? Would printed information be a choice? Is there a context where your audience would like to take part of printed information? Or should it be personal information? Can you invite to meetings, workshops, or encourage other forms of direct contact? And should this information be provided as text, pictures, videos, or should it be all of them? We know that different target groups or different persons rather like to take part of information in different ways. It could be, some people prefer text, some people prefer pictures, diagrams, and some people prefer to watch films, interviews about the subject. A lot of our information will, however, be text messages, and a few pieces of advice about text messages. In order to be clear, we should try to avoid too long sentences. Shorter sentences are often easier to understand. And even if we do want to get a flow and a mix between long and shorter sentences, it's easy to make the sentences too complicated, and this makes it difficult for readers who are in a hurry. Try to be active and direct in your communication. If you can, use active verbs. You can do it instead of it can be done by you, so that the reader feels that you're addressing them. Someone wants to talk to me. And use words that are adapted to the audience, as easy and as short as possible. Sometimes they should be more specific, but in general, try to make it as easy to understand as possible. A general tip is to try to imagine that you're talking to a reader. What would you say? It's often easier when we talk to someone to be clear and get to the point quick. So the advice is to be clear and concise, and if possible to avoid too formal writing, since this can create a distance between the message and the reader. I will give a quick simplified example about adapting information for different target groups, because it doesn't have to be complicated. The general tips are to keep a positive tone, and if possible, you take the edge of possible objections. You make it clear why there is no need to be concerned, and you provide examples if possible. So this example message is if you would want to communicate the idea of using public transportation or bicycles instead of driving a car in the city. And if you have an audience consisting of young people, you might do something like this in different channels. On the website, you present something that's new and might arouse interest first. The new bike routes are ready. Then you try to be specific and communicate something that the audience can see in front of them. In this example, it's go from South Hill to North Hill without having to share the space with cars and trucks. And then you want to provide something that makes it easier and to use this, and could be a call to action. Download our new map or use the bike app and try the bike routes to get through the whole city. On Facebook, it might be try our new bike routes, let us know what you think and give us tips on new routes, where you would want to have interactivity and get in touch with your audience. On Twitter, it could be simply see on the new bike route, check out the map. And then you would have hashtags depending on the current debates, the current, what else is going on Twitter at that time. It could be climate, environment, cyclist, for example. For families, you might want to communicate something else to address their specific needs. On the website, it could be buses, underground, and trams cover the city, and it's free for children under 10 years. You want to stress the arguments that's particularly strong for your target audience. And if you think there's a concern that this might be complicated, then you write, try our interactive guide to quickly solve any kind of questions or worry about problems about this. So this can be how this can be used. If you have a possibility, you might also want to use examples and something that your audience can identify with. In this case, I have used feedback from Fabulous traveling with city buses before, and they give their view. It was quicker than by car and it was easy to access, etc. If you have another audience, businesses, you obviously want to stress the points that are important for businesses. It could be the fact that driving a bike could save time. In this case, using the bike would save around 15 minutes on an average trip in the center of the city. And you might also want to use local examples that other companies have bought bikes for their employees to save time and to reduce carbon footprint. Or whatever it is, and you could have an interview with someone who tells about this. In this case, it's a CEO. If you want to address other CEOs, you might want to use an interview so that you get the view from someone who has tried this, who has done this. And it doesn't have to be more complicated than that, but try to highlight what is most important for different audiences. And I'm going to sum this up with a suggestion, a piece of advice that when you communicate, don't wait until your content and your target audience analysis are perfect and complete, because things change so quickly with where your audience will take part of information and what things that are being discussed that makes your subject on top of mind at that moment. So start where you are and adjust according to your results, statistics and feedback. You will get a lot of statistics, obviously, from the web and possible feedbacks. So try and learn accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susanne. Are there any questions directly to Susanne? If you would like to ask a question, you can just raise your hand and I can unmute your microphone. There seem to be no questions right now. I suggest that we continue then with the next presenter. And if you come up with a question later on, you can still ask the question, I think, in the end, or send an email to us, and we will forward your questions. Once again, thank you, Susanne, for this very interesting introduction on how to interact with different target audiences.
Thank you very much.
Now continue with Katrin from the Energy Agency of Southeast Sweden. I will make your presenter. Katrin.
Yes.
And then you should be able to share your presentation. Does it work for you, Katrin? We don't see anything yet.
Your presentation? You don't see anything?
No.
Well, it seems to be a problem because I still have a list with from Ingo on the right. So perhaps it's better that you share it.
Okay, I will try. Okay. now you should be able to see Katrine's presentation here. So the screen and microphone is yours, Katrine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me know when you want me to switch the slides.
All right, yes. As I said earlier, my name is Katrine Svensson, and I'm working at the Energy Agency for Southeast Sweden as a project officer. And I've been working here for almost a year, and before that I worked within the municipality with climate strategies, environmental objectives and measures, and communication. And today I will try to give you some examples of how the climate municipalities in Sweden are working to engage and involve citizens. You can change slide. First, a brief information about our energy agency. We are a non-profit company, and we are owned by municipalities, county councils, and regional councils in the southeast part of Sweden. And that means that we should work with projects that actually help the municipalities to develop a more sustainable energy system. And we do that in different ways. We work with research, different reports. It could be networks for municipalities or for different companies, educations, and so on. And sometimes also information campaigns. Our main is to increase energy efficiency in all sectors of the society, and also to increase the share of energy from renewable energy sources. You can switch. And we do that together with the municipalities, and some of the municipalities in southeast Sweden has joined the association, the Swedish Climate Municipalities. It's an association with 35 of the most progressive climate municipalities in Sweden, and they meet several times each year to have an experience exchange of good solutions, problems, and so on. And they also discuss how you can improve national grants, laws, and so on, and have an input on a national level. But one important function is to support the municipalities with questions that regard the comment of mayors, and I know that you are also working with comment of mayors. And one theme that the municipalities thought was hard to work with, it was climate communication. How could we involve and engage citizens more? And then the association made a handbook about climate communication. And the different municipalities have worked in different ways to engage the citizens, and I will give some examples. You can change. The first example is climate pilots. The target group for this project is households, and it's quite a lot of municipalities in Sweden that have tried to work in similar projects. And we have tried to reach out to citizens through media and asked for participants that want to join the project that they can get education and advice of how they can live more sustainable and how they can decrease their emissions of CO2. And normally we could get groups with 15 or 20 participants. And we start with estimating their individual CO2 emissions and what they want to achieve by joining the project. After that, we have meetings with the whole group, normally one meeting at a month. And then we have an inspiration lecture or a movie to give information about the theme that we work with that month. And each participant also get a challenge that they should work with in their everyday life. And those challenges are connected to their home or their house energy efficient, or what could they do? Could they improve the isolation, change windows, change light bulbs, and so on? And then they come back and report what they have done, how it worked, what they thought about it. And another theme is what they eat. Could they eat more vegetarian food? What is climate smart to eat? How can they reduce food waste, and so on? There have been challenges about how they travel. One challenge about how they travel to work and to different activities. And another challenge regarding how they travel on vacations. It could also be challenges regarding own energy production for their self-consumption. And when I worked in Kristianstad, we had a challenge close to Christmas. So that challenge was about consumption and what they should eat during Christmas and what kind of gifts they would give and so on. So as an organizer, you can decide what kind of subjects and if it should be only climate or sustainability. In our case, the participant also got a visit at their home from the local energy and climate advisor, so they can get advices that are appropriate in their situation. When you're working with this kind of small groups, you also would like to reach out to other citizens. And because of that, it's important to have media in the project from the start. If they can write about it to help you to find participants, if they can write about the different challenges and what the participant has reached in the end of the project. Because if they do that, you can reach out to a greater audience. And sometimes it's hard. In our case, we had a participant that were a journalist, so she wrote about her own experience in the newspaper and on Facebook and so on. But another idea is to include a local celebrity. If you have a politician, an actor, a football player that is known, you get more interest from both the public and from media. And if you're looking at the picture on the right, you can see two people from the northern part of Sweden. It's a couple that have decided that they will become fossil fuel free in 2025. And he has won the Olympics in biathlon, and she is a world champion in arm wrestling. So they are rather famous in Sweden, and you can invite them to have lectures. And if you do that, you probably could get media interested as well. So that's also an opportunity. Even though the aim of this kind of project is to change behavior patterns, you will also you will have feedback from the participants, because they will ask you about how it works in the municipality. Could we have more bicycle lanes where I live, and so on. So it's also a good way to get suggestions from the participants and their way of looking at our environmental work. Now you can change slide. It takes a lot of time to work with small groups. So in Örebro City, they decided to make this kind of project as a web campaign instead, and they call it Climate Smart Every Day. They created a website to present news, activities and offers, web portraits, climate smart recipes, and social media. And at this website and on the social media, they present a new challenge every month, and anyone can join. You can join one challenge or several. And it's an easier way to reach out to more citizens. The project has also been medically attended and appreciated, so it's been successful in that way. It's harder to estimate what the participants achieved, but after some challenges related to electrical bicycles, they have seen a big boost for electric bicycle use in Örebro. The municipality also hoped that they could have a greater public acceptance of policy climate measures through the project and information. For example, if they want to decrease the amount of parking lots in the city, or if they want to build more bicycle lanes, they hope that the acceptance has increased. But I haven't seen any elevation about that, so it will be interesting to see if they do. You can change. The third example of a similar project is Be Change in Luleå. It's the latest one, and similar to the other projects because they also work with a small group of participants, 21, and it's private persons that get education and challenges. But what they have done here is that they combine climate advising and mental coaching. Because they say if you want to make a real change, you have to have your heart and mind in the project. And they also say that a lot of people today are anxious about the climate. I think it's a huge problem, and perhaps it's hard to make a change. And people also wonder, does it really matter what I do? So they want to give a mental coaching to give you hope, but also tools to make it easier to change your lifestyle and patterns. So you will have tools for achieving objectives, keep your motivation, and increase your hope. So you have one climate advisor that educates you about climate and good opportunities and solutions, and a mental coach that helps you to identify your problems and how you can make a change and get motivated. The evaluation of this project shows that the participant reduced their CO2 emissions with 42% in average, and their hopefulness increased with 30%. Most of the participants have changed their lifestyle, but they don't feel that they have sacrificed anything in their lifestyles by taking the bike instead of a car and so on. Instead, they are feeling much better than before. So we think this project is really interesting, and we would like to try one Be Change here in Blekinge. The project in Luleå was supported by national grants, so we hope that we also can get a grant and try the same concept here. Yes, you can change. But sometimes the municipalities would like to work more narrow with a certain theme. And a lot of municipalities have tried to change travel habits to make citizens try a new pattern. One example is test travelers. The target group is people that are taking the car to the work, and here they get an opportunity to commute free by train or bus for 30 days. And they promise to try this for a certain amount of days if they join the project, and a lot of them are continuing to take train or bus, perhaps not every day, but for some days of the week. In a similar way, there have been projects related to bicycles, and it's called Health Cyclists. If you join the project, you agree to take the bike to work for at least 4 days a week during half a year. And as a participant, you will have a health check before and after the period. You will also get rain clothes and a bicycle helmet. And the result from the participants shows that they have an improved fitness and decreased CO2 emissions. So that kind of project is rather successful, but sometimes it could be hard to reach them who don't already use the bicycle a couple of days a week. Yes, you can change. Another way to reach out to citizens is to have campaigns at workplaces. And a lot of municipalities had education of environmental representatives from each workplace. And in the next step, those environmental representatives educate the other employees at the workplace. And probably it will lead to a changed behavior both in the workplace but also at home. But to keep the interest, you have to continue educations or to make campaigns. One example is Climate Smart at Work we have been working with, that we had different inspiring lectures, and the participant went back to their workplaces and found out how they work with those issues and discussed what kind of solutions they can use to improve their work. And often we had competitions between the workplaces, and it's a good idea to compare how they work and perhaps list the best ones so you can see, okay, they are better than us, then we should also have possibilities to improve. What can we do? And the result is that we have a lot of discussions in the different workplaces and new solutions, because everybody would like to be among the best. And if you're working with workplaces in the municipal organization, you can also combine that with traveling policies or other policy instruments. Yes, you can change. The environmental workshop in the municipality of Helsingborg is an example of how you can work with students and pupils in school. They have built a meeting place with exhibitions, educational rooms, both inside and outdoors. So the different schools could book a time and they could get there, or they can go on study visits that are arranged by the environmental workshop. And the workshop place offer classes programs aimed at different year courses. So you can get back every year with your class, and it's for free. They also arrange environmental educations for all employees within the municipal organization. And you can come there as a group to visit exhibitions. And one example is, for a couple of years ago, the city was making a new spatial plan for the city. And then they made interviews with politicians and citizens and asked them about, what do you think about a sustainable society? How would it look within 20 years? And then they made an exhibition from those comments and interviews within a time capsule. So you would travel in time, perhaps 20 years. And you can see those comments and what a sustainable society could look like. And then you can have discussions, what is important for us, how can we achieve the society, and so on. And that's a way of involving different actors. It could be associations that get there together with the municipality and so on. So I think this, to have that kind of room that is permanent is very valuable. You can change slide. Some municipalities also work with local sustainability weeks. It's an annual activity with a lot in the programs. They can have lectures, tryout workshops, exhibitions, debates with politicians. And in some municipality, you can also arrange an activity as a private person and join the program. But normally it's arranged from the municipality together with university associations and educational associations. The aim is to show inspiring solutions, but also to create opportunity to talk and have a discussion with citizens. It could be a good opportunity to talk about a new climate strategy or a new environmental program and get some feedback from the citizens. We had a future scout in 1 year. We had a lecturer that made a vision about how Kristianstad could be sustainable and how it would look in 2030. And he had the vision and pictures what it would look like. And after his lecture, we had a workshop and discussed with different actors how we could get to this sustainable society. All the important questions for us were in the vision, or if we should add something, and so on. So I think that was a good way to involve other actors. And I think more and more municipalities are working with this kind of arrangement. It was my last example, so you can change picture again. Thank you for listening, and please, if you have any reflections, if you're working in the same way, or if you want to know more about some of the examples, you can have a question now or contact me further on.
Thank you very much, Katrin, for these very nice and interesting examples.